Today in front of us, we have the governor's nomination for the administration of the Division of Public Utilities and Carrier, Linda George, who's addressing our committee via telecommunication. Hey, Linda, how are you?
Hello, Senator.
You hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So within the packet that everybody has, we have letters of recommendation for her. We have her disclosure form that she filled out for everybody. Uprise sent us something I put in the record as well, as they asked me today. Typically, we have people that would come here and testify on behalf or in opposition, whatever the case may be, but today it's just you, Linda.
Well, thank you. I feel special.
So what I'm going to ask Linda, the floor is going to be all yours. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you think about the job and where the job is going to be going, what you think about certain policies, or whatever the case may be. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. And good afternoon to the members of the committee. Thank you for considering my nomination. The COVID pandemic has understandably limited the General Assembly's ability to conduct business, and I very much appreciate your consideration in taking up my nomination today. For those who do not know me, I'd like to provide a brief summary of my professional career that spans almost 30 years. After graduating from law school in 1991, I worked for a litigation firm for a few years before joining the Attorney General's office in the Civil Division. Before the creation of the Attorney General's Open Government Unit, I investigated open meetings and public records complaints, issued opinions, and filed lawsuits against public bodies. I later left the Attorney General's office to raise my family. In 2004, I began working for the Rhode Island Senate, first in the fiscal office, working with the Committee on Government Oversight, and then in the policy office, where I provided support to senators on environmental and energy issues. And I also staffed Chair Sosnowski's Committee on Environment and Agriculture. During that time, I supported the Senate's ambitious clean energy initiatives that included advancing new legislation and amending existing legislation. That, I would venture to guess, is familiar to many of you. These include the Resilient RI Act, Energy Efficiency and Least Cost Procurement, the Renewable Energy Growth Program, net metering, and the Affordable Clean Energy Securities Act, just to name a few. I left the policy office and took an opportunity to join the Public Utilities Commission as a staff attorney. In that role, I supported commissioners and worked on dockets addressing many of the energy statutes I just mentioned. From there, I moved up one floor to join the Division of Public Utilities and Carriers to focus on utility regulation. What I bring to this position is experience. Experience in good, open government, and experience addressing energy issues from many perspectives: legislative, regulatory, and quasi-judicial, all the while appreciating the critical role of each and every stakeholder. I also bring a continued commitment and enthusiasm to continue Rhode Island's path to clean energy future. As administrator, my most fundamental responsibility is to ensure utility companies that we regulate provide safe, reliable service for all Rhode Island ratepayers at just and reasonable rates. While gas and electric service tend to get the most attention, the division also regulates 6 water utilities and the Narragansett Bay Commission. In addition, the division has the sole jurisdiction over companies that provide intrastate transportation of people and property, things you would not ordinarily associate with utility service, like ferry operations, taxicabs, towing companies, and household good movers, and rideshare services like Uber and Lyft. The division is also mandated by statute to represent ratepayers in all proceedings before the PUC. This role requires legal, fiscal, engineering, policy, consumer, and rate-making expertise, that is provided by the dedicated staff at the division and consultants with technical expertise. In addition to its role in PUC hearings, the division is also charged with implementing the state's gas pipeline safety enforcement and overseeing non-regulated power producers, as well as defending the PUC decisions before the Supreme Court and representing the state's interests in all energy matters in federal court and before Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC. In both its role before the Commission and as an expert standalone agency, the division addresses issues that shape the evolving nature of utilities, including renewables, energy efficiency, and decisions around infrastructure spending. The division is also focused on bill affordability for all utility customers, along with particular attention to the needs of low and moderate income ratepayers. I mention both renewable energy and ratepayer affordability because they are two exceptionally important matters for you at the State House, and equally so for us at 89 Jefferson Boulevard. Rather than go too far afield in addressing those topics in these opening remarks, I stand ready fully to answer any questions you may have on these topics. But rest assured, however, that my priorities as administrator will be to ensure that utilities provide safe, reliable service at just and reasonable rates, and to ensure as well that Rhode Island continues to be a national leader in addressing the impacts of climate change, which drives the state's vibrant and growing clean energy economy. Lastly, I would just like to say that I've spent the last 8 months in my interim role addressing these important matters with my hardworking team and leading the agency through unprecedented times during this pandemic. Suffice it to say that the division has not missed a beat in recent months and has continued to serve the public, our regulated utilities, and license holders, all the while keeping the safety of our employees at the forefront of all decisions. I would be glad and indeed proud to provide you after this hearing with an email detailing all the steps my team and I have taken to lead the agency through this COVID crisis. Finally, let me say this. I am excited and truly honored to be part of Governor Raimondo's energy team. And with that, I ask for your advice and consent of my nomination, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Linda, for that review. Appreciate it. Of all the work that you've done in the past, we're very familiar with what you've done here in the Senate, which was always appreciated by this committee. I open up the floor to questions. Senator Bell.
Thank you so much, Chairman. And thank you, Acting Administrator. I first just want to say, I've heard from a lot of my colleagues a lot of incredibly nice things about you personally, and I think people have very fond memories of working with you in the Senate, and I've heard of a lot of great things about people's experience working with you personally. I'm going to ask you the question that I told you I was going to ask you, which came to me from concern raised by Sunrise, Rhode Island, which relates to some comments you made to the Providence Journal about the Aquidneck Island pipeline proposal. And for those following along at home, this is a proposal that was listed in the report that came out about the Aquidneck Island gas crisis as one of the things and policies that could be considered. But no recommendation was made in favor of the proposal or that it would help with reliability issues. And the report found that there was no capacity or proximal capacity problem leading to the underpressurization crisis. And so the comments you made were that this pipeline would increase reliability. And I was a little bit surprised and struck by those because, my understanding is that an increase of pipeline capacity at least proximal capacity, would not help with underpressurization, of course, because as you have more volume, as gas expands to fill a larger volume, its pressure decreases proportionally. And so it would, in fact, make their underpressurization risk worse, as well as, of course, adding to the pipeline or the valve failure risk, which was a major driver of this crisis. So I was hoping that you could clarify those comments, and I was wondering if what you actually were intending to convey was that this was a policy that was considered in the report on reliability, but not that it was a policy that would, and that you were not trying to make a technical determination that it would, in fact, increase reliability.
So, Senator, I'd be happy to answer that. As you stated, we had a conversation, and you indicated you'd be asking me this question. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to respond. And I'm going to give you an answer, Senator, that I had an interview that what I think you're referring to is a Providence Journal article back in October or November, around the time the Aquidneck Island report came out. I think that's what you're referring to, right? Yes,
yes,
okay.
correct. Sorry,
okay.
You can't see me nodding.
So, Senator, I had that interview where I said a lot of things, and that was one of the quotes they took. Mm-hmm. That statement was not, rather that statement was based on what gas experts were saying that were involved in the review. But I'm no engineer. Yeah, but you've raised a very important question, and when we're evaluating all the alternatives for Aquidneck Island reliability, that certainly will be one of the questions that we'll address. I can assure you that we certainly don't want to add gas infrastructure that becomes obsolete when we're trying to reduce our dependence on gas. I don't know what more I can tell you, but adding expensive infrastructure is not a first choice.
Let's
On the same subject, or?
It would be similar, but not in the same.
Do you have a follow-up
Yeah,
on this matter?
I do, but if Senator Quesada wants to go first, that's fine.
No, that's fine.
Senator Bell, follow up, and then we'll go Senator Quesada.
Thank you so much for that response, and I really, really appreciate it. You know, it brings me on the edge of the decision I'm making here. I think it would be helpful just to clarify the process whereby you get technical advice. And I'm concerned that sometimes the consultants used have an overly industry bias. And I also find it surprising that the consultants would have raised or made that statement, and the report, which went into great detail about the technical details, would not have conveyed and included anywhere in it that there was a problem with essentially overpressurization risk or any of the things that would lead to increased reliability from increased capacity. And in fact, did indicate that the lack of capacity along that line was not a problem. So I'm a little bit surprised to learn that the consultant said that, and also surprised about the process that it wouldn't have shown up in the report. And I'm hoping you can clarify a little bit the process whereby you look at consultant advice and you think about industry ties and inherent industry biases on behalf of these consultants.
Senator, I've given you the best answer I can. I was relying on the experts. I certainly will follow up. But I can't retract that statement unless I know it was wrong. And the advice of the consultants is what I was relaying in that news article. But what I would like to convey here and communicate to the committee today is that I have personally pressed National Grid to vet all options available and consider for providing reliability on Aquidneck Island. That includes looking at alternative sites for liquid natural gas and pipeline infrastructure, as well as non-pipeline alternatives, such as energy efficiency, demand response, and other options. And we will look at all those options, and the company will come before us with a proposal. And when we are vetting that proposal, I will certainly look into the question that you raised today, which is an important one.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Senator Casado.
You're welcome, Senator.
Hi, good afternoon. My question is, with the COVID-19 just happening, the governor and most of her briefing was telling many people in my community, around Rhode Island, not to be concerned about not paying the bills because they're not going to be disconnected because of the situation we were going through. But I'm very concerned because of the community that I represent, that now many of these people wasn't paying the bills. One reason because some of them wasn't able to, other reason because they know they wasn't going to be shut off. What's going to happen in the near future when many of these bills started coming very high, many of them not going to be able to pay? How the PUC want to be able to help many people in my community? Or not just my community, but I'm talking about Rhode Island.
Senator, thank you for that question. It's an important one. It's very relevant given the COVID situation. And I just want to say that this COVID pandemic has not just impacted low-income ratepayers. It's impacted small businesses, large businesses, and ratepayers who only a few months ago were able to pay their utility bills. This is truly an unprecedented financial crisis that has impacted all ratepayer classes. There is a program, an arrearage management program, that assists low-income ratepayers in paying their arrearages. It actually provides relief if a ratepayer stays current with their bill. They are given arrearage forgiveness, and that's a program that the consumer agents in my office, as well as National Grid's consumer department, can assist ratepayers in entering those plans. But I agree with you. This is an unprecedented situation, and we need to do all we can to support people, help them get on their feet, and help them pay their electric and utility, water and gas bills so that their utilities are not shut off.
I just had a
Senator Casado.
My other question has to do, many people don't feel that when they go in front of the PUC that they are there for them. They feel that you're more on behalf of the company, not on behalf of the customers. Then how are you planning to change that?
Senator, thank you for that question. I, as administrator, represent all ratepayers. I have an open door policy. I believe that all voices should be heard, that we should collaborate and address issues, and we should not walk away from but face head-on challenges. I will listen to all voices. And if there are concerns from your constituents or you or members of the committee, I am always willing to hear and address them and move forward. In addition, there is a ratepayers advisory board that was established. Curiously, that was the first piece of legislation that I worked on when I started in the Senate Policy Office. And that advisory board was established to allow ratepayers to voice their concerns and issues before the administrator, who is now me, hopefully. And I would say that is an excellent opportunity to bring issues to the forefront. That board needs a few nominees. Some terms have expired, and I've reached out to the administration, and I'm working on fully staffing or fully appointing that board so that we can get that up and running and address ratepayer issues.
Thank you, Chair.
Further questions? Sen Lombardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Linda, it's nice to see you again. Thank you for being here via Zoom.
Thank you, Senator. It's good to see you, too.
Thank you. I have to ask you, will you be supportive of PIP, Percentage Income Payment Program, that would make utilities more affordable for low-income Rhode Islanders?
Senator, thank you for that question. I'm glad you're asking. It's very current. It's very relevant. It's something I've been asked often in the last 8 months and more recently. A PIP is one way to address affordability. There are other ways to assist low-income ratepayers as well. For example, the current discount gives low-income ratepayers a 25 or 30% discount on their total bill. This discount was put into effect a couple of years ago, and it represented measurable, meaningful rate relief for the most vulnerable members of our state. And I support that 100%. However, we have to acknowledge people are still struggling, and we have to consider more options. And I absolutely would consider a PIP. In fact, Rhode Island had one as a pilot program many years ago, and it was funded with federal dollars, and when the dollars dried up, so did the program. But a PIP has to be very carefully considered, and it has to be based on data-driven analysis. You have to consider the administrative costs of the program. How would you determine eligibility requirements? What percentage would the discount be? How many categories of percent discounts would you allow? And most importantly, bill impacts. The bill impacts for those who are not participating in the PIP program, the other ratepayers. The COVID pandemic did not just impact low-income ratepayers. It impacted businesses, small, large, industry as well, and other ratepayers. This is truly an unprecedented financial crisis. It's impacting all classes of ratepayers. So we have to be very careful when we design programs to assist one class that we're not harming others. And the COVID financial crisis has made that all the more important that we carefully and fairly balance the interests of all ratepayers. I am committed to looking at all options and proposals consistent with legislative policies, and the COVID crisis compels me to do so.
Follow-up, Sen Lombardo.
Thank you very much, Linda. I'm glad to hear it is on your radar, and it's something that you will be working forward. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Senator.
Linda, I have a question for you. The governor in our last State of the State talked about using renewable energy or going strictly for renewable energy by 2030, which is only 10 years away.
Yes.
Any thoughts on how we're going to transition from what we currently have to where we could be?
So, Senator, thank you for asking that question. I'm currently working in collaboration with OER, who is leading this initiative, and it is directed by the governor's executive order to achieve 100% renewable, clean electricity by 2030. And we are in the beginning stages of this, identifying broad principles. But one of the things that I, as the ratepayer advocate, bring to this table is that we will look at and consider bill impacts of any alternatives. I don't have an answer for you here today. The work stream has just begun, but what I can say is that this process involves tremendous stakeholder input, and we are putting together groups who can provide input on how this clean energy initiative could look, how it would impact them, and what their concerns and hopes are for this. And while we put these groups together, from business to municipal to environmental and energy developers, all different stakeholder groups, I'm happy to reach out to you and make you part of the process or include your staff in this as well. It's an exciting opportunity. It has to be carefully considered with data-driven analysis and constantly looking at ratepayer impacts.
Thank you. Further questions
You're
from the
welcome,
committee?
sir.
I move
Everybody's
the
good?
nomination.
Oh, Sen Lombardo.
I move the nomination.
We have a motion to move the nomination, seconded by Senator McCaffrey. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Senator Bell in opposition, Senator Casada in favor? Okay. Congratulations, Linda.
Congratulations, Linda.
Thank
And,
you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
And your nomination will now go to the entire floor when we meet.
Thank you.
Have a good day.